You wake up on time, you answer messages, you eat, you function. From the outside, you're fine. Inside, something is missing, like a light that still hums but does not glow. This is not sadness. Sadness is loud. This is quiet, precise. You can feel your life, but not yourself. You laugh at the right moments, nod in the right places, say the right words, and nothing moves. Hours pass like glass, perfectly clear, perfectly cold. Your brain keeps asking for evidence. What's wrong? Where's the problem? There is not one. That's the problem. When nothing is wrong, emptiness becomes harder to explain and easier to hide. You start shrinking your world to the things you can control, the playlist you repeat, the routine you defend, the screens you scroll. Relief arrives in small doses, then fades even faster. Each day feels smoother, each day feels thinner. This is not failure, it's disconnection. Your emotions did not vanish, they powered down. Not because you're weak, because your mind learned to protect you from the stress, from the noise, from the moments you didn't have time to feel. But protection has a price. When you numb the sharp edges, you dull the beautiful ones. When you avoid the hard things, you lose the real ones. And slowly, you forget the shape of your own voice. If you've been wondering why success doesn't feel like a rival, why love feels distant, why victories feel quiet, why you look at your life and it looks back like a photograph, this is where we find out. In the next few minutes, you'll see what emptiness actually does to your brain's wiring, why your thoughts get louder when your feelings go silent, and how a life that looks healthy can switch your soul offline without you noticing. We'll map the hidden loop, the routines that keep you safe, the instincts that keep you stuck, and the precise places where feeling comes back. Not through hype, not through force, through contact. With the parts of you that went quiet to survive. You are not broken, you are disconnected. And disconnection can be rewired. Stay. Let's turn the lights back on. You think you've lost motivation, but what you've really lost is signal. Your emotions are still online. They just keep buffering, cutting in and out, like a weak connection. And somewhere between your thoughts and your feelings, the line went quiet. This isn't depression, it's disconnection. A subtler, quieter malfunction of the mind. The kind that doesn't collapse you, but slowly powers you down. Inside your brain, the chemistry that once danced in rhythm, dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, starts to tire. They don't vanish, they flatten. Dopamine, your drive molecule, fades after too much repetition and not enough reward. Serotonin, your stabilizer, becomes dull when joy stops translating into feeling. Like batteries left in a device that's always on, the system still runs. But the current grows weak. Meanwhile, deep in your skull, a quiet civil war begins. The limbic system, the emotional core of your brain, starts to drift from the prefrontal cortex, the part that manages logic, judgment, and control. In a healthy mind, these two regions dance together, feeling and reason, emotion and restraint. But under chronic overstimulation or emotional fatigue, the bridge between them weakens. Your emotions still fire, they just don't reach consciousness with the same voltage. You stop feeling before you even realize you've stopped. Your prefrontal cortex, overworked and overthinking, takes command. It becomes the pilot that never sleeps, analyzing, managing, suppressing. It keeps you functioning, but it keeps you from living. Because the brain can't prioritize both safety and connection at the same time. It chooses survival. Always survival. And survival, for the modern mind, often looks like emotional numbness. This is how the quiet burnout begins. Not with collapse, but with compliance. You go through the motions, fulfilling tasks while your emotional bandwidth narrows. You start confusing calm with peace, and emptiness with control. Because on the surface, nothing seems broken. Your life looks fine. You look fine. But under the surface, the music has stopped, and your nervous system, stripped of emotional rhythm, just hums along in static. What you feel now, or can't feel, isn't a lack of humanity. It's biology doing its job too well. Your brain learned to mute the noise, to protect you from pain, from stress, from the weight of too much sensation. But in silencing what hurts, it silenced what heals. Maybe that's why silence feels safer, because deep down, you know how loud real life can be. But you can only stay disconnected for so long before the mind starts craving its own signal again. And when it does, when that first spark of emotion flickers back, it can feel almost unbearable. But that's the proof you're still here. You were never broken. Just waiting for reconnection. It doesn't happen overnight. At first, it feels like rest, the kind of stillness you've been craving. Then, without warning, that calm turns into something heavier, something hollow. You scroll, you work, you achieve, but you don't feel. You tell yourself this is just how adulthood feels, busy, distracted, efficient, but the truth is quieter and darker. You've trained your brain to survive stimulation, not emotion. Every second your senses are flooded. Messages, metrics, notifications, noise. Your mind was never built for this kind of frequency. Each click gives a microdose of dopamine, a small hit of aliveness. But the more you chase it, the more the brain adapts. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. Pleasure that fades as quickly as it comes. The same stimulus that once made you feel alive now barely moves you. So you scroll faster, work harder, buy more, consume endlessly. Not because you're greedy, but because your nervous system has gone numb. The irony is cruel. You're surrounded by stimulation, yet starving for sensation. Your attention is overfed, your emotions are undernourished. You've mistaken activity for connection, noise for meaning, and distraction for peace. And when the world finally goes quiet, you realize how empty the silence feels. This is what psychologist Terry Kupers called emotional deprivation. When the mind, deprived of authentic contact and purpose, begins to atrophy in invisible ways. In prisons, it happens through isolation. In modern life, it happens through overstimulation. Different environment, same result. A slow erosion of emotional depth. You start avoiding discomfort, believing calm equals control. But when you avoid pain, you also avoid growth. When you suppress conflict, you also suppress passion. And the longer you live inside comfort, the more fragile you become outside it. Because comfort without challenge doesn't heal you. It numbs you. The spiral continues quietly. You work to feel useful, achieve to feel seen, succeed to feel alive. But everything you gain dissolves into the same gray static. Nothing sticks, nothing satisfies. You keep trying to fix the emptiness with more of what caused it. More goals, more screens, more noise. Until you realize the real addiction was never pleasure. It was avoidance. Avoiding the stillness where the truth lives. You scroll, you work, you achieve, but you don't feel. Because feeling requires stillness, and stillness, for the disconnected mind, feels unbearable. Maybe that's the real spiral. Not falling, but circling. Around the same tasks, the same distractions, the same hollow peace. A loop designed to protect you from the one thing you're most afraid of. Your own unfiltered emotions. And that's why the emptiness grows quieter, not louder, because silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the echo of everything you've been avoiding. There comes a point when emptiness stops feeling emotional. It starts feeling existential. You don't just lose interest in things. You lose the you who once wanted them. The excitement, the hunger, the pulse of purpose, all fade into a strange neutrality. You're still functioning, but something essential has slipped beneath the surface. You stop knowing what you want because you stop feeling what you want. Desire becomes distant, not gone, just unreachable. It lingers like a word on the tip of your tongue, a dream you can't quite remember, and the more you try to force meaning back into your life, the further it drifts. Jung called this the moment the shadow begins to stir, the place inside you where all unmet desires and unlived selves wait in silence. The parts of you that were too ambitious, too angry, too tender to show the world. When your outer life becomes performance, the shadow becomes your only witness. It doesn't disappear, it simply watches, patiently, resentfully, waiting for you to notice how much of yourself you've buried to stay fine. This is the quiet identity collapse. Not a dramatic breakdown, but a gradual fading of color. You look in the mirror and recognize the shape, but not the story. You move through your days like a well-drawn outline missing its shading. Everything fits, yet nothing feels inhabited. Nietzsche once said that when a person stops becoming, they start decaying. You can survive years like that, orbiting the same routines, mistaking repetition for purpose. Your calendar fills, your days blur, and every morning you rebuild the same version of yourself just to keep existing. Growth requires friction, but comfort has made you smooth. Somewhere in the repetition, you've traded evolution for maintenance. You've confused stability with identity, productivity with presence. And now, even your reflection feels tired of pretending. This is the heaviest moment, the midpoint of the descent. When you realize the emptiness isn't a mood, it's a mirror. It's reflecting the gap between who you are and who you were meant to become. Maybe that's what this hollow feeling has been trying to tell you, that the self you're living isn't the self you long for. That absence, when listened to closely, isn't silence. It's a signal. And in that stillness between who you were and who you could be, you'll either keep fading or begin becoming again. You've never been more connected, yet never felt more alone. 1,000 names sit in your phone, hundreds of faces scroll past your eyes, and still the silence between you and the world grows louder. You can reach anyone instantly, but no one completely. This is modern loneliness, connection without contact. The invisible epidemic of a generation surrounded by voices but starved of presence. We call it social media, but it often feels more like solitary confinement with better lighting. In the 1980s, psychologist Terry Kupers described what happens to the human mind in physical isolation. A loss of identity, a fading of reality, and the slow decay of emotional balance. Today, that same phenomenon happens behind screens. Not with walls, but with Wi-Fi. Different cage, same deprivation. You wake up and check your phone before your pulse. You scroll through proof of other people's lives before you've felt your own. Every ping releases dopamine, a small reminder that you still exist in someone's digital orbit. But those hits fade fast, and when they fade, you feel emptier than before. Because the brain doesn't just crave connection, it craves reciprocity. Researchers at Harvard found that rates of chronic loneliness have tripled since 2010, even as online interaction has multiplied tenfold. We built networks so vast they could encircle the planet, and in doing so, we lost the small circle that once encircled the heart. Psychologists call it social reality testing, our ability to confirm our sense of self through real, mutual interaction. When no one mirrors your emotions, your brain starts to doubt its own reality. You become the echo of your own thoughts, the prisoner and the guard. You have physical freedom, but emotional imprisonment. You move through crowded rooms feeling invisible. You post, you reply, you perform, yet no one truly sees you. The performance becomes protection, and protection slowly becomes personality. Look around, a cafe full of people, eyes glowing with blue light. No one speaking, no one touching, all of them scrolling. It looks peaceful, almost holy, like a congregation praying to something unseen. But the worship is silent, and the God is attention. The cruelest part is that loneliness doesn't scream anymore. It scrolls. It hides beneath productivity, under laughter, inside endless notifications. We've mistaken visibility for intimacy. As long as someone can see us, we think we exist. But existence isn't visibility, it's contact. And contact has weight, breath, warmth, imperfection. Things you can't download, filter, or perform. So we hover between two worlds, digitally surrounded, emotionally starved. Our minds wired for touch, our lives built for distance. Each scroll a heartbeat in the wrong rhythm, fast, constant, empty. Maybe that's the paradox of our age. We're all shouting through the same screen, hoping someone, somewhere, will look up and see us. Not our profile, not our progress, but the person quietly waiting behind it. You've spent years mastering the art of control. You manage your reactions, contain your emotions, keep your voice steady. You've learned that peace comes from holding yourself together, even when you're breaking. But somewhere along the way, control stopped feeling like strength and started feeling like restraint. When did peace start meaning silence? When did calm become another word for numb? You tell yourself you're protecting your sanity, avoiding chaos, avoiding pain. But every time you mute the ache, you also mute the music, because you can't selectively numb emotions. The brain doesn't work like that. When you shut out sorrow, you dim joy. When you suppress fear, you dull wonder. And over time, your emotional landscape flattens into something safe and lifeless. Neuroscientists call this neural adaptation, the brain's way of rewiring itself under chronic suppression. When you hold back emotions for too long, the stress circuits stay active but disconnected. Your body thinks it's calm, but your nervous system is in quiet panic. Heart rate steady, mind exhausted, soul half asleep. You've built an entire identity around emotional management, but control isn't peace. It's tension disguised as discipline. You stopped shouting, you stopped crying, stopped needing, and called it maturity. But what if that calm is just a cage? What if "I'm fine" became your way of saying, "I've stopped feeling"? Maybe this is the hidden cost of constant control. You're safe, but not alive. You've built walls strong enough to keep out pain, but high enough to block sunlight too. You keep waiting for life to feel lighter, but safety has weight. Heavy, quiet, invisible. You don't need to lose control to be free. You just need to stop mistaking numbness for peace. Because safety isn't the opposite of danger. It's the opposite of experience. And every time you choose to feel less, you also live less. Peace was never meant to be still. It was meant to be alive. So ask yourself, has control protected you? Or has it imprisoned you? It doesn't return all at once. Feeling comes back like the first sound after silence. Soft, hesitant, almost fragile. You don't even notice it at first. A small warmth while watching sunlight spill through the window. A flicker of recognition when someone laughs beside you. Tiny moments that pulse against the numbness. Proof that something inside you still wants to live. This is how it begins. Not with grand gestures, but micro-awakenings. A walk without your phone. A breath that actually reaches your lungs. A conversation that doesn't need to end with answers. The mind, once desperate to manage everything, begins to loosen its grip. And the body, that quiet archive of everything you've avoided, starts to thaw. Feeling returns when you stop running from it. Not when you chase happiness, but when you make space for discomfort. Because emotions aren't problems to solve. They're languages to relearn. Grief speaks softly. Joy shouts in rhythm. Fear whispers warnings that often sound like doubt. And the heart, after years of silence, begins to relearn the alphabet of feeling. Kupers was right. Routine can keep you sane, but it can't make you whole. You can fill your days with movement and still be emotionally still. Healing doesn't happen through activity. It happens through contact, through moments that remind your nervous system that life is safe enough to feel again. A shared meal, a walk with no purpose, someone's eyes meeting yours and not looking away. You start noticing the small ruptures in your armor, a tear at a song you can't explain, a shiver when the wind feels too honest, a heartbeat that suddenly feels heavier than before. That's not weakness. That's the system rebooting, the mind reconnecting to the body remembering it's alive. There's no manual for coming back to yourself, no sudden breakthrough. Just moments, quiet, fleeting, honest, that gather over time. You begin to feel the weight of the world again, but this time, it doesn't crush you, it grounds you. Because numbness was never peace, it was pause. And the moment you allow yourself to feel again, the world somehow starts to feel you back. Maybe the emptiness was never just yours. Maybe it's the echo of a culture that forgot how to feel. We live in a world that rewards productivity over presence, a system that measures worth in hours, output, and visibility. The faster you move, the more valuable you seem. But what happens when movement replaces meaning? We call it progress, but it often feels like performance. Every day becomes a transaction. Your time, your attention, your energy, traded for the illusion of connection, of success, of enough. You scroll not to feel, but to appear alive. You produce not to create, but to stay relevant. And in the process, you begin to forget what it means to be. This is what philosophers now call emotional capitalism, a world that sells you meaning through consumption. You don't buy a product, you buy identity. You don't share a post, you share proof of existence. Every emotion becomes content. Every connection becomes data. Even your pain has a price tag. The result? A quiet, collective exhaustion. A generation fluent in self-awareness, but starved of self-connection. We know how to analyze our trauma, name our patterns, quote our philosophers. Yet we struggle to sit alone in silence without checking if someone saw it. The competitor of loneliness isn't company anymore, it's distraction. And the more distracted we become, the emptier we feel. Because distraction fills the time, not the soul. Look around, everyone's performing calmness, smiling through burnout, celebrating productivity while grieving peace. We glorify discipline, but bury tenderness. We call exhaustion ambition and numbness stability. And then we wonder why we feel nothing when everything seems fine. Maybe the emptiness isn't inside you. Maybe it's the world echoing through you. Maybe what you feel is the collective burnout of a species that traded stillness for speed and depth for dopamine. But here's the truth hidden in the noise. The world won't slow down for you. So you'll have to slow down inside it, because meaning doesn't exist in motion. It exists in attention. And attention is the last rebellion left in a world that profits from your distraction. You don't need to fix the emptiness. You need to listen to it. It isn't a flaw in your design. It's a message, a signal from the parts of you that still remember what being alive felt like. You began this journey believing peace meant the absence of pain. But now you know, peace without feeling isn't peace. It's numbness wearing calm as a disguise. You've learned that stillness isn't supposed to be quiet. It's supposed to breathe. The emptiness was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to call you back. Back to the sensations you buried, the voices you silenced, the life you reduced to tasks and survival. You spent years mastering control, but control was never the goal. Connection was. To the world, to others, to yourself. Because every emotion, even the heavy ones, is proof that something inside you still answers when life calls your name. Kupers wrote about how people deprived of real contact lose their sense of identity. Maybe that's what this whole experience has been. A kind of emotional solitary confinement. And now, finally, a return to touch. To feel again, you had to stop running from what hurt. You had to let life touch you. Not perfectly, but truthfully. So no, the goal was never to eliminate the chaos. It was to find stillness within it, to feel the full spectrum again. Fear, joy, sorrow, wonder, without shutting any of it out. Because we don't feel whole when nothing is wrong. We feel whole when something finally moves us again. When the heart beats not from fear, but from recognition. I am still here. And maybe that's where healing truly begins. Not when you silence the emptiness, but when you finally have the courage to listen to what it's been saying all along.